Hello, friends. Welcome to This Day in Jack Benny. I'm John Henderson. This is not an episode of the Jack Benny program, but a bonus episode. I had the opportunity to speak with the great film critic and historian Leonard Maltin about his book, The Great American Broadcast. I co-hosted with my friend Zach Eastman, so sit back and enjoy the show. Welcome.
Welcome, sir.
Thank you. Thank you.
We are here to talk about your book, The Great American Broadcast, and how in doing that and all the lovely work you've done in film over the years, that you got to interact with a lot of the Benny cast and crew. But I want to kick it off with this first question before we let John kind of handle some stuff here. What prompted you to write the book, and how did you come about the process of handling radio research versus film research?
Well, it happened because my wife's favorite actor is Ronald Colman. And a friend said, well, have you heard the Jack Benny episodes with Ronald Colman? And we said, I'm sorry, but it's true. At the time, we said, duh, no. So he gave us audio cassettes, and we started listening to them in the car and fell in love with them. We just kind of got hooked. We went to our first Spurback meeting and saw our first recreation of old-time radio with original old-time radio actors.
Wow.
Yeah.
So this is almost 40 years ago. So a great many of them were still alive, and I fell in love with all of that. And when I fall in love with something, I have to write about it. That's just my MO. So I pitched my publisher a book, and then other things got in the way. So it took me 11 years.
Wow.
To write it, which turned out to be a blessing because I kept meeting new people and getting new information and new material. And I also got to rethink and rewrite.
Definitely.
So I'm very proud of the book. It didn't make the bestseller list, but I'm very, very proud of it.
Yeah, I just got my copy in the mail. I'm really looking forward to reading it. Can I still get my free CD?
Well, Carl Amari is still alive and well. And he's the kind of guy that would probably make good.
That's awesome.
I had this, what I thought was a perfect tie-in idea, which was to glue a little sleeve inside the cover of the hardcover book with a CD inside. Multimedia. Why not? Carl was going to do it for free. Carl Amari of Radio Spirits at the time. But Penguin, my publisher, said it's going to cost 50 cents to glue those sleeves. And we don't want to spend that. And I was ahead of the game just by them publishing. In the first place. So
in doing the research for the book, tell us a little bit about the people you met, like Dennis Day.
I was working then for Entertainment Tonight, which at that time was a hugely successful and popular show.
Yes. And
being affiliated with it opened doors for me. It just gave me access to all sorts of people. Dennis came to ET to do an interview for some nostalgia piece they were working on. And so I, of course, grabbed hold of him for an additional 10 or 15 minutes. So it was a very brief chat that I had with him. But he was such a nice man, ready, willing, eager to talk about his time with Jack.
What year approximately was this?
Well, I'm guessing in the mid to late 80s.
Yeah.
The single most exciting moment that I had in this arena was that I got to tap Frank Nelson on the shoulder, say, "Oh, Mister," and he turned around and said, at a volume level that I dare not try to reproduce. Yes. But he was just a lovely man and a wonderful interview.
So, in the process of meeting the cast, I think one name sticks out for not just radio fans but animation fans, and it's Phil Harris.
Well, yes. At one time, that was his calling card for vast numbers of people. He's Baloo. He's Baloo the bear. They were reissuing the Aristocats, and that was my opportunity to have Entertainment Tonight book an interview with him.
Wow.
They decided to do it at Disneyland, in a nice, comfortable bench with Tom Sawyer Island behind us. I met Alice Faye subsequent to that, a year or two later. She said, "Who wore a purple sweater that day, didn't he?" I said, "Yeah." She said, "I chose that sweater." and I have a souvenir photo of the two of us sitting on that bench. He was just what you wanted Phil Harris to be: open and friendly, and easy to talk to, and he loved Jack. You can see him on the episode of This Is Your Life. You can see the affection between them, and he was so grateful. Everyone was grateful to Jack because Jack was generous, both literally and figuratively. Elliot Lewis said Jack would send him little bonus checks when he got laughs doing his oddball character.
Yeah. And Elliot Lewis was a big time, he went on to be a big time old time radio producer too, right?
Mm. Yes, he did. He wound up writer, producer, director, and incidentally actor. I asked everybody I interviewed who's the best radio actor, and all the West Coast people said without hesitation, Elliot Lewis.
Huh.
But he wound up playing Frankie Remley.
Yeah, that's right.
Phil Harris, Alice Faye show for a number of years because he enjoyed it.
And there was a point, actually, even to when they ceased using the Remley name later on in the Phil and Alice show, they just referred to him as Elliot.
But Phil was very grateful to Jack for the fact that when Phil and Alice got their own show on Sunday night, immediately following Jack at 7:30, Jack moved to CBS. They were on NBC, and Jack made sure that Phil's segment on the Jack Benny show occurred in the first quarter hour.
Right.
To give Phil time to go down the block to NBC from CBS. And he didn't take that for granted at all.
Absolutely. I think a lot of his cast were generous to him because he had been generous to them in the past.
Yes. And as far as I interviewed Lauren Bacall once. I asked what it was like to he and Bogart here together on Jack Benny show.
Right, yeah.
Said, essentially what she said was, you felt safe. They felt safe. They knew that they would not be embarrassed in any way.
Right, yeah.
They were in good hands.
There is another cast member that I'm always eternally fascinated by this man because he is he would go on to become a very major TV legend, Sheldon Leonard.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sheldon Leonard, I can't say I got to know him well, but I got to talk to him on several occasions, and one time did a formal interview with him. This was a man whose resume is one of the longest and most eclectic of anybody associated with Jack. Because he started as an actor.
Yeah.
And he played little of everything. He played good guys, bad guys, and everything in between. He was a very good actor. And of course, he kind of cornered the market on playing certain underworld types.
Yes.
And that was perpetuated in a very funny way by the Jack Benny show, where he was the racetrack tout would say, hey, bud. and he is the one who actually got to say to Jack Benny, your money or your life.
Oh, really?
I think it's the television one in which he does it.
Ah. Did you speak to him at all about any of his television producing, like his involvement in the Dick Van Dyke Show?
Just a little bit, because that's what everybody asked him about.
Sure.
But he too, he like everyone that I met was happy to be part of the extended Jack Benny ensemble. And again, it took no persuasion to get him to talk about it.
George Balzer, one of Jack's writers. Did it feel any different talking to a writer? Did you feel like you had to ask him different types of questions as opposed to a performer? Or
Well, sure, of course.
yeah,
And I wanted to put it in. I wanted to have some context to understand his career before and after. He was a very nice man. He was retired. The thing I remember most has nothing to do with actual writing. Jack came back from a meeting one day. Well, fellas, we're set for another 7 years. And as George said, you just didn't hear things like that. It just didn't happen.
mm-hmm.
Of course, no one could have known what kind of upheaval television would create and how they would deal with it. They dealt with it beautifully, of course. No, but no one could have predicted that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It appears seamless to us, but it was not. Read reviews of the first TV show, and not everybody was happy with it.
Yeah, you talk about the transition to television, and unlike William Conrad, the cast of the Jack Benny Show more or less fits the characters that they had been playing. And I wonder, when you met them in real life, how closely did, like, Phil Harris and Dennis Day fit the characters that they had played?
I think it's fair to say in almost no way.
Oh.
Phil Harris told me that he and Alice didn't want to do a TV show. Too much work. They were very happy living in the Palm Springs area, but they wanted to be active. They just didn't want to overdo it. And that's why they chose to do a radio show.
Mm-hmm.
They could drive up on, say, Friday and do rehearsal and dress rehearsal Saturday, and then have the rest of the week to themselves, back where they were comfortable, where they were raising 2 daughters. So he was far from the happy-go-lucky, hard-drinking
Right.
playboy.
Jack took one part of you and then amplified it 500 times, or put it under a microscope. And then there's a blank in the room. What is it like sitting in a room or talking to Mel Blanc?
Well, he was one of my idols. I wrote him a fan letter when I was like 12 years old, and he answered.
Oh.
He answered on stationery that had kind of a light rendering of Bugs Bunny.
Aww.
And then I wrote again. And then finally, when I moved here, got to meet him on a couple of occasions. He was a performer's performer, and he needed no persuasion to do his characters for you.
Uh-huh.
You wanted Yosemite Sam, you got Yosemite Sam 100%.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite character he did on Jack's show?
I think Professor LeBlanc. I mean, it's hard not to say the Mexican.
Yeah, the Seaside Sue guy. Yeah.
Everything he did was great, and he talked about the fact that Jack was such a great audience. People go out of their way to say how nice, how kind, how generous, how giving, as a scene partner, as a boss. Everyone feels the same about Jack. Mm-hmm. So Mel Blanc also told stories about how Jack was given to such enthusiasm. This is the greatest cup of soup I've ever had.
So when you're interviewing Mel or anybody, how do you decide, like, especially with such a huge career, how do you decide what questions you're going to ask?
Well, it depends on if there's a specific purpose for the interview. When I was working on the radio book, Great American Broadcast, that was my focus. It was almost all about radio.
That's awesome.
There's like, if you get the Looney Tunes Golden Collections, which you are on many of the featurettes, I think you can hear Mel and Arthur Q. Bryan like in some rehearsal sessions in 1 or 2 clips of them doing "Kill the Wabbit" and his Jolson. I love.
I love his Jolson.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Wait, I just want to ask about the since we mentioned the Looney Tunes and the Golden Collection and those special features that you appear on, I noticed you wear like a Bugs Bunny pin, and I wonder if you've got any Jack Benny pins of any kind.
I do collect pins, and I try to wear them on appropriate occasions. I don't have a Jack Benny pin. I'm just going to have to fashion one of my own, I guess.
Go into the metalworks.
And what I may do is I may take one of the Radio Mirror magazines, one of those magazines where there's a nice rendering of him, and just shrink it down.
That would be a good one. Find a T-shirt from John.
Yeah, I've got LSMFT right now, which is Lucky Strike means fine tobacco.
My daughter, who is now 36, grew up listening to the Jack Benny show tapes that we would play in our car. When she made her first travels in her teen years without us, she took those tapes along as kind of her security blankets.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. I heard on one of your podcasts where she mentioned you showed a picture of the cast for the first time, and what was her response?
Didn't want to know. You didn't want to know what they looked like. She said, take it away. She had already created in her mind her images of the cast. Unlike some other old radio shows that I played for her, I didn't have to explain any of the jokes.
Yeah.
There was mostly non-topical humor. I played some craft music halls with Al Jolson and Oscar Levant, and she said it required too much explaining.
Yeah. And Fred Allen is the same way, where there's too many references to topical things that are
But
going
the
on.
advantage of Fred Allen, I found, is that it actually gives you an entry point to educate yourself on local and national news of the era. It's like a
yes, it's true. Which we take as a benefit.
Mm-hmm.
When I was a kid watching the Warner Brothers cartoons, they were my sort of social education for the 40s.
Yeah. I'm surprised that when we watch those cartoons with my children, they are fascinated and they want to know who everybody is. And it's not like because they don't know them, they don't want to watch those cartoons. They're like, I want to see another one like that. They love those caricature cartoons.
Yeah.
That's great. I mean, and of course, when Rocky and Bullwinkle came along, it took me years to learn that there was an opera named Boris Godunov. And the Simpsons do the same thing. The Simpsons, their frame of reference is so broad.
I've started a thing with my kids where during the summer, they can only watch black and white. And so they complain, I don't want to watch this. I say, then go outside and play. And they'll go outside and play. But when they want to come in and watch something, it's black and white.
I showed my nephew Looney Tunes when he was very, very young, and the Roadrunner got him very excited.
I've got a last question for you too, Leonard, if we could. You're a movie guy. So of all the Jack Benny movies, which one do you think is the best and which is maybe the worst?
Well, I actually like The Meanest Man in the World.
Oh.
But the best movie, without a sliding scale, is To Be or Not to Be. Because it's not a Jack Benny movie. It's an Ernst Lubitsch movie that stars Jack Benny and Carol Lombard, and it is a masterpiece. A great, great movie. My favorite Jack Benny movie is probably The Horn Blows at Midnight.
Such a fun, joyous time to watch it, even though you kind of, like, you can objectively recognize why it didn't do super well. But, like, internally, you're just like, yeah, but this is just fun. And it's fun to have fun.
Yeah.
Well, I heard on the radio that it wasn't very good. I didn't bother going to see it.
I had the opposite. I actively looked for it. I'm like, get me a VHS player immediately. Well, Leonard, thank you so much for taking the time. I am so delighted, and I know John feels the same way, that we got to talk about your love of radio this time and to hear your voice and your eyes and see your eyes light up at the mention of a lot of these figures that you grew to love and got to meet.
I feel so lucky. My timing has been good in life. I came along at the right moment when I wanted to write about animation and learn about animation history. So many of the people were still alive, and the same for radio.
Yes. Well, I know because I just bought this book that even though it's not in print, it is still available. And I'd also like to recommend to anybody, if you can find a copy of Make 'em Laugh, It's a great PBS documentary series in which Leonard Maltin appears on the Jack Benny portion.
Yeah. And if folks out there want to see Leonard at his finest, and if you can find them, get some of these Walt Disney treasures, please. This on the front lines thing taught me a lot in high school that the teachers weren't teaching me.
My kids love the Annette series. That's their favorite.
Yeah.
You're raising your kids right.
But more importantly, on that front, you've been as kind as Jack is with your time with us. It's so greatly appreciated, my friend.
Well, this is no chore. It's a treat for me.